Hello again. So let's, in this video, explain the two different types of fiscal policy. Okay, so in the previous video, I said that there are two different types of government spending. So discretionary government spending and mandatory government spending. So by the same classification, so we can classify the fiscal policy into two different types. So we have discretionary fiscal policy here, and non-discretionary policy, which I'm going to explain it in the next slide. Okay, so discretionary fiscal policy. So under discretionary fiscal policy, we have two different types. We have expansionary fiscal policy, and we have contractionary fiscal policy. Okay, so we have two, these are the two fiscal policies. So we have the expansionary fiscal policy, and the second type is, I'm going to write it down here. So contractionary fiscal policy. So these are the two types of fiscal policy. Let's start with the expansionary fiscal policy. Here I'm just repeating what I said in the previous video about the different tools of the fiscal policy. So here I'm saying that fiscal policy refers to the deliberate congressional manipulation of federal taxes and government spending, because these are the two different tools of the fiscal policy, and this action has to be done by the Congress. So let's focus on the two types of the fiscal policy. So let's explain first the first type, which is the expansionary fiscal policy. So by its name, you can guess like when this action will be taken. So expansionary fiscal policy will be taken when. So you have to think about this, when the federal government will start to implement an expansionary fiscal policy. The answer for this question, when it's during recession. Yes, it makes sense. So whenever the market is in a recession, so the federal government is trying to expand the economy. That's why this fiscal policy is called an expansionary fiscal policy. Okay, so the fiscal policy, the expansionary fiscal policy is done during recessions. And what are the tools of the expansionary fiscal policy? So we already explained that the tools of the fiscal policy is government spending and tax, right? But you have to know the direction of these two tools, which means, so should the government increase government spending or reduce government spending in recession? So I can hear the answer now. So yes, so in recession, one of the tools of the expansion of fiscal policy is increasing government spending. Okay, I said this before. So by increasing the government spending in the GDP formula, so if this fiscal policy is successful, so hopefully the GDP will be increased. The second tool of the expansion of fiscal policy is cutting taxes. So cutting taxes is the second tool of the expansion of fiscal policy. Okay, here the rationale for lowering taxes in recession. So if economy is in a recession, so the government may decide to lower the income taxes for household. Why? So what will be the expected outcome for cutting taxes? If the government cut taxes, this increase leads to what? Increase in disposable income for everyone. So for example, if I'm getting $100 and instead of paying like 30% taxes, I'm gonna pay 20% taxes. So instead of having like disposable income of 70, I will have disposable income of $80. Right. So this explains this statement. So this will increase disposable income for everyone. So now I have 80 instead of 70. So with extra cash in my pocket, so the government hoped that people would take this extra income and go out to buy big screen TV, eat out more, take vacations, and so forth. So this means if I have more disposable income in my pocket, so hopefully this will increase the consumption. And don't forget, the consumption is one of the components, one of the huge components of the GDP formula. Okay, let's continue here. So, okay, spending more on goods and services affect the C component of GDP. This is what I said. A tax cut only would be effective if people use the money to increase consumption of goods and services. Okay, employment increases and unemployment will fall, and this is what we want to see to happen. Okay, so now two real life examples about using tax tools as a tool of the expansion of fiscal policy. In 2001, there was a short recession after the terrorist attack in September 2001. So that's why President George Bush decreased taxes to help pull the economy out of recession. Also in 2009 and 2010, after the 2008 and 7 financial crisis, so President Obama, so the federal government enacted the Making Work Pay tax credit, which led to a 400 reduction in taxes for working individuals, 800 for households. So this is an example for tax cut. Okay, here's the question. So does the federal government have to use like either cutting taxes or increasing spending? The answer is no. So the federal government has the freedom to use both tools at the same time when the market is in a recession. And this is what happened also in 2009. So in 2009, again, after 2007, 2008 financial crisis, Congress passed the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, and often referred to as the stimulus package. This stimulus package has like 787 billion stimulus. And this stimulus was a combination of what? This is what I want to focus on. Increased government spending and decreasing taxes. So 2/3 of this amount of stimulus package, which is 787 billion. Okay, so 2/3 was government spending and 1/3 was cutting taxes. Okay, let's have a quick example about the impact of expansionary fiscal policy. Okay, so here the questions say that columns 1 and 2 is the supply. So the 1 and 2 is the supply. Okay, so 2 is the supply. And columns 1 and 3 is the demand. So this is the demand. Question number A is asking about what will be the equilibrium GDP. We know that the equilibrium will be achieved when the demand matches the supply, or when the demand equals the supply. So we can look here to the quantities here. These are the quantities supplied, and this is the quantity demanded. And let's just look at what price when those two quantities will be equal. So you can see that here, when the price equals 180, the quantity supplied will be equal to the quantity demanded. So the answer for question number A, the equilibrium GDP is what? Is here ask about the quantity. So it will be 2300 and the price level will be 180. Now, let's see the impact of the fiscal policy. I said that the impact of the expansion of fiscal policy, if it's effective, will increase the GDP, which is the same as the aggregate demand. Okay, so let me explain this on the graph. So let's say that this is AD1. Okay, let's say this is AD1. And let's say this is AD2, which is this column. Okay. So if the fiscal policy is effective and people will pay less taxes and the government spend more, so people have more money to spend, so increasing consumption, increasing investment, increasing government spending. So if the fiscal policy is effective, so the aggregate demand is supposed to shift to the right. Okay, let's see this in impact in the question. So here the question number B says, suppose that an expansionary fiscal policy increased aggregate demand from the shown in column 1 and 3, which is AD1, to that shown in columns 1 and 4. So shift from AD1 to AD2. Okay, the price level will increase to what? So here, if this is the case, this will be the new aggregate demand. So let's focus on this. This will be the demand column, and this will be this is still the supply column. So let's focus on these two columns. And again, let's look when will the demand will exactly equal the supply. If this is the case, we will see that when price equal 190, so this is the supply and this is the demand. As you can see, the demand and supply is equal when the price equals 190. So the question says the price level will increase to 190 from 180, and this rise in the price level will result in the GDP will increase to 2350. And you can see this question, like the graphical representation of this question on this graph. As you can see, so this is the first equilibrium point. So the after the change, after the shift in aggregate demand, the price level will increase. At the same time, the demand or the equilibrium quantity will increase. Okay. So the bottom line from this example is what is the impact of expansionary fiscal policy. Again, if it's effective, the price level will increase, and also the GDP, which is the same as aggregate demand, will also increase. Okay, now after we are done with the expansion of fiscal policy, this was the first type of the fiscal policy. Now let's look to the second type of the fiscal policy, which is called contractionary fiscal policy. When I explained the expansion of fiscal policy, the first question I asked was what? When the federal government will implement the expansion of fiscal policy. That's why I'm going to repeat the same question here. So when the federal government will implement what do we call contractionary fiscal policy? So the answer is of this one question is when the market is or when the economy is in expansion. So simply, I'm going to say here exactly the opposite of what I said in the expansion of fiscal policy. Expansion of fiscal policy, we do it in recession. Contraction of fiscal policy, we do it in expansion. What about the tools? Okay, what about the tools? We still have the same tools here, so which is government spending and tax cut. But the direction of these tools will be the opposite because the market is already expanding. So we want to contract the economy. So like the economy doesn't need to spend more time on scholarships and educations and infrastructure because the market is already doing well. We don't need to spend more time on more money on the on unemployment benefits. At the same time, the business is booming, so that's why we can increase taxes. There's no point to cut tax while the market is doing well. So these are the two tools of the contractionary fiscal policy. Okay, I like this table because this table actually summarizes everything I said in this video. So we have two different types of fiscal policy. We have expansionary fiscal policy and contractionary fiscal policy. Okay, the first question you have to answer is when. So the expansion of fiscal policy, we do it in recession. Contraction of fiscal policy, we do it in whenever there is rising inflation, whenever the inflation is high, and this is usually when the market is expanding. The second question you have to ask is what are the tools of each of these fiscal policy? Expansion of fiscal policy, I said, so government spending increase and cutting taxes. What about the contraction of fiscal policy? The opposite. So the government spending, cutting government spending, and increasing taxes. The last question you have to ask yourself is, what will be the impact? What will be the impact of these two fiscal policy? The impact of the fiscal expansion of fiscal policy, as we saw in the previous slide, so the GDP and the price will increase. The impact of a contraction of fiscal policy, GDP and price will fall. So that's why I like this table. So this table summarizes everything I said in this video. So again, you have to understand when, what are the tools, and what will be the impact of each of these two different types of policies. Okay, let me finish this video by something which is, I think it's interesting, which is what is the political ideology of the Republicans and Democrats about the fiscal policy? So, and let's start with the Republican Party. So, Republicans' view of taxes, Republicans state this plainly on the Republican National Convention website. If you go to the Republican National Convention website, you will see this statement. The Republicans say that we believe government should tax only to raise money for its essential functions. At the same time, they say that this is their view about government spending. So this is G and this is T. At the same time, here is the Republicans' view about government spending. They say that the money the government spends, which is the government spending, doesn't belong to the government. It belongs to the taxpayers who earn it. Republicans believe Americans deserve to keep more of their own money to save and invest for the future. And low tax policies help drive a strong and healthy economy. So from these two quotes, you can guess that Republicans usually favor the tax tool compared to the government spending tool. So they believe that cutting taxes is more efficient in stimulating the economy. Let's compare this with the view of the Democrats. The view of the Democrats is a bit different, so the Democrats' view of taxes is they say that the tax policy of the Democratic Party calls for raising taxes to provide money for government spending, which in turn generates business. But let's see what is the Democrats' view about government spending. They say that they think that government spending provides good jobs and help economy today. Okay, so they believe that prices tend to stay relatively stable and therefore any kind of spending, whether by consuming or government, will grow the economy. So to summarize this slide, so we can say that generally speaking, Republicans prefer the tax tool, while the Democrats prefer the government spending tool. Okay, you can see these differences in ideology between the two parties. If you click on these two videos, this is an example. Usually the fiscal policy is one of the hot topics which are covered in the presidential debates. So that's why feel free to watch this video. It's about tax cut debate between Obama and Romney. And also this is another tax debate between Hillary Clinton and Trump. Okay, this is what I have for this video. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.